Houston's largest international and independent film festival is almost here. The 16th annual Houston Cinema Arts Festival runs November 7th through the 17th, featuring over 40 unique film events, workshops, performances, and more. Just the first week, you can see the coming-of-age film Tendaberry. Then, the 30th anniversary screening of Reality Bites, and Swamp Dogg gets his pool painted with a performance from Swamp Dogg himself at the newly reopened River Oaks Theater. Get your all-access passes, which include all the screenings, performances, and exclusive parties at cinemahtx.org/HCAF. Single tickets are available too. November is the month to explore Pearland's dining scene with Pearland Restaurant Weeks. From Boiling Dragon's famous Dragon Seafood Fried Rice to your new favorite Chicken Fried Chicken at Magnolia Cajun Comfort, there's a Pearland restaurant to satisfy every palate. Support small and discover neighborhood gems in Pearland this fall with Pearland Restaurant Weeks running November 1st through the 30th. See the menus at visitpearland.com/restaurant weeks and start planning your weekend today. Today on CityCast Houston, Election Day is finally here, so we'll hear directly from local voters on their picks and the reasons behind them. Plus, conservative commentator Charles Blain and education advocate and attorney Monica Flores Richart join me to share their final thoughts on key races that could reshape life in Houston. It's Tuesday, November 5th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. We made it to Election Day. Monica, good morning. Welcome in. How are you?
Good morning. I am so excited to see what this day brings. I'm pumped. I'm ready.
Yeah, same here. It's going to be an interesting day. And Charles, welcome in. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm also excited to see what this day brings, but much more excited for it to be over.
Yes. And you know what the best part about today is? Of course, you get to go out and vote, and democracy and people get to voice their opinion. That's great. But the second best part is no more political ads. I'm talking about the TV ads on YouTube, mailers, text messages, everything, door knocking. It all ends today, which is exciting as well. What was the craziest political ad you saw in Houston during this campaign cycle, Charles?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it came from a Republican, a disgruntled runner-up for the nomination for Harris County Sheriff. And so this candidate was upset with the nominee, Mike Knox, and argued in this ad that he sent out during early voting that Mike Knox was not actually qualified to be on the ballot because of when he reinstated his peace officer license. And according to state law, that's not correct. I think Mike Knox is eligible to be on the ballot, but it's frustrating to see, and it was a little crazy to see a disgruntled candidate trying to push this out the second week of early voting.
Wow, some internal fighting. That's one way to go about it. How about you, Monica?
You know, I saw some coverage of this ad. I never really saw it on TV, but there is an ad coming from the National Resource Defense Council that's just anti-Ted Cruz. And it's this American Psycho theme. And they start with a view of a hotel room in Cancun with nice clean lines, ocean out of the windows. And it pans to a gentleman walking into the bathroom. And then it shows Ted Cruz's face taking off a layer of skin, it appears. It is the weirdest thing. And it says something like, all's well and good until the grid collapses and, he runs off to Cancun. It is such a strange ad. I don't know if it actually made it to the airwaves, but that was one of the wildest ads I'd seen in a long time.
Wow, I have not seen that one, but I'm glad you brought up that race because it was the most expensive Senate race in the nation with about $166 million being spent on it. And I was watching the local news and ABC 13 to be specific on Friday, and I saw a commercial break where it was 4 straight ads for All Red, then Cruz, All Red, Cruz. Then the next commercial break, same thing, All Red, Cruz, All Red, Cruz. It was all about this race. And there are going to be TV executives buying new vacation homes because of this race, okay? Just because of how much money was spent.
Yeah, vacation homes, putting their kids through college, wedding. There's gonna be a lot of money spent because of how much was spent on that race. And it's interesting. I mean, I think Democrats went into this thinking that Colin was going to be their best bet, and they really put all the money behind him to try to make that be the case. And at the same time, Republicans felt Cruz was vulnerable and needed to dump everything they could into that race to try to save him. And so, yeah, money has been flying left and right. I mean, not just with TV ads, but with block walkers and paid texts and everything else. Cruz has been on a statewide bus tour. I mean, they've really pumped a lot of money in and out of this race. And it's been a sight to see. But as a voter, getting all the texts and everything, it's not that fun.
It is not fun. Hey, so on today's show, we'll be hearing from local Houstonians on how they voted and why. But before we get to that, let's talk about the early voting numbers. Early voting ended on Friday, and the Harris County Elections Department has reported a huge turnout. We're talking over 1.1 million people in Harris County who voted early. That's 46% of registered voters. Monica, let's start with you. What's your takeaway from the numbers so far?
It is a big turnout, but it also is relatively flat compared to 2020 and 2016. So with regard to the early vote, it's all going to depend on what happens on Election Day, whether they can turn out 400,000 people to the polls. It is also, to me, very surprising that after Kamala came down, had Beyonce, had the big, event, that it didn't spur more people to the polls and kind of increase those numbers. That was a little bit surprising to me. I think this is going to have real implications also on the bond issues and the various races on the bottom of the ballot. You're not seeing the turnout just for the top of the ticket, I think, the way that we kind of hoped when Kamala entered this race and what happened when Obama entered the race, right? You had a lot of people coming in just voting for the top of the ticket. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens on Election Day. It's all going to hinge on Election Day.
How about you, Charles? What were your big takeaways from early voting numbers?
I mean, similar to Monica, I was kind of shocked, particularly when you look at the demographics. There was a lot of talk ahead of this election, like in the middle of the cycle, about wanting to see increases in the younger vote, in the women's vote, in the Black vote. And those demographics have remained kind of steady or flat compared to their previous years. And so you would think, especially when the Democrats, replaced their nominee, that might have changed things. Republicans, attempting to reach out to different groups, that might change things. But it didn't make as big of an impact as I think a lot of people wanted, and certainly as much as the money that they put towards it would have said otherwise. And so I thought that was really interesting. Also interesting is there's been some breakdowns of voters with Republican voting share and Democratic voting share. And while we are, a blue county, I mean, Harris County Republicans have kind of kept pace behind Democrats in the county, which I think for Republicans who've been out of power in the county for a while, we're hoping to at least have a really good showing, if not win, at least show that they can remain competitive.
And don't forget, today is Election Day, and if you want to find a polling station near you, go to votetexas.gov to find that polling location. A lot of options. Don't wait, though, because, look, it might be long. Don't be making excuses when you get there and the lines are long. Make sure you get it done today. And, we are lucky that we had a chance to hear from some of those who early voted here in Houston, and we conducted a very informal, very unscientific exit poll. Now, these people shared how they're feeling about the election, what issues drove their decisions, and we will be hearing from one of those people right now, and that is Jessica Bolaños, who runs a Latino-owned small business together with her husband, and she's feeling a lot of urgency with this election, but said that when she attended the Kamala Harris rally with Beyonce, it really drove home for her just how big the decision is. Here's more of what she said.
I feel super anxious about Election Day results, but even more about the reality of the country we live in. The American dream has been sold to immigrants for a long time, and I feel like it's been increasingly hard for a lot of us to achieve that dream. It feels really weird to be in a country claimed by immigrants where half the population now acts like their families didn't come from somewhere else, and now trying to shut the door on newer immigrants like my family and friends. I've also been struggling with the choices that we have, but frustrations and weirdness aside, I'm still holding on to a fragile sense of hope. It's complicated, it's messy, but I'm choosing to believe in a better, more inclusive future.
Jessica also brought up Israel's bombardment of Gaza, the potential mass deportation of undocumented residents under a Trump presidency, and then she was really passionate about access to healthcare for women and reproductive rights as well. What were your thoughts when you heard this, Monica?
I think Jessica expresses a lot of what I've seen in the Latino community. I'm on TikTok a lot, really connected to the Latino community there. And we feel it's very personal. A lot of us feel it's a very personal election, from what happened with regard to the Puerto Rico comments and immigration in particular. I think she's expressing what a lot of us feel. And, she talked about hope, and you can't not connect that word with the Obama campaign. They used it because it's a powerful word. It's a powerful feeling. And that is what can drive people to the polls. That is what can drive people to make a choice. And, I see what's reflected in my community. People say don't take it personal, but it is very personal to us. It has to do with our families who have immigrated. It has to do with how we are seen in our community as Latinos, how we're talked about. So I really, I feel for Jessica. Unfortunately, I don't think the Latino vote, we're going to see the jump that we really hoped to before this election. The polling that we had seen was through the roof. The studies we had seen was through the roof about people showing up for the first time. I'm just not seeing that reflected in the numbers, and it's very disappointing. But I think there's a general fatigue over the whole country. This is the third time we've had Trump on the ticket, and it's just exhausting being so outraged about everything that happens. So I think that she's really talking about a lot of things that concern a lot of Latinos right now.
Charles, your thoughts? Because there's a lot of internal dialogue and kind of figuring out, it is messy. There's just no clear-cut answer, seems like. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so much of what she said stood out, but talking about it being messy and complicated, but remaining or keeping that hope, I think is kind of the essence of who we are. It's always messy. It's always complicated. It's always a little scary because we don't know who's going to win. We don't know what the next 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, whatever is going to look like, but we have hope that ultimately at the end of the day, it's better. I also, on what Monica was saying about the Latino vote, I know ahead of the election, there was so much talk about Latino vote coming out for Democrats, and because of the rhetoric that we've been hearing. But yeah, it just didn't seem to manifest, both at the national level when you're looking at Vice President Harris and President Trump, but also at the state Senate level. I know Colin Allred really was hoping that the Latino vote would come in for him and kind of help push him over the edge. And it's not the end of the day yet. We don't know. But based on the numbers that we've seen so far, it doesn't seem to be the case. Not saying that they're turning out for Republicans en masse, but they're not turning out in the way that some of the conversation leading up to the election would have led you to believe. And I'm interested in finding out why that is. And I know that a lot of Latinos that I've spoken to keep repeating that they are not a monolith, similar to the Black community. And I think that's the interesting part of trying to navigate what people want and what's going to motivate them to come out. And that's something that I think people need to spend a lot of time and a lot of money on in coming years to truly understand.
Great point. Yeah, and that's the same thing that's happening in the South Asian community. I would like to bring up as well is that we are not a monolith, and there are people who think one way, and it's okay, and let's understand why. So that seems to be a trend amongst a lot of minority communities here, not only in Harris County, in the greater Houston area, but Texas and the nation as well, as you so finely put it, Charles.
What's so frustrating is you have these political consultants and stuff who always, they bank so much money on being able to quote unquote turn out the Latino vote or the Black vote or Southeast Asian vote or whatever this group is. They claim they can do it, but yet they don't know the intricacies of those communities and how to speak to them. And then they never actually do, but yet next election cycle, they get hired again to do the same thing all over again.
So true. One thing I love about Houston is that it's full of amazing stories. Here's one that I just learned about. In 1940, a girl named Ruth Steinfeld and her family were deported from Germany to one of the first Nazi concentration camps in France. She and her sister managed to escape with the help of a rescue group, and Ruth ended up making a life here in Houston. Now her portrait is part of a new exhibit called Facing Survival by David Casson. The exhibit memorializes over 24 survivors at Holocaust Museum Houston. and they really make you think about the resiliency of the human spirit. Facing Survival is on view now through January 5th at Holocaust Museum Houston, and the museum is free on Thursdays from 2 to 5 p.m., and kids 18 and under and college students are always free at Holocaust Museum Houston. Learn more at hmh.org/Facing Survival.
This episode is brought to you by Etsy.
Oh.
Hear that?
Okay. Thank you.
Etsy knows these aren't the sounds of holiday gifting. Well, not the ones you're hoping for. You want squeals of delight, happy tears.
How did you?
And spontaneously written songs of joy.
I am so happy. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, the song needs a bit of work, but anyway, to get those reactions, make sure everyone on your list feels heard with handmade, handpicked, and designed gifts from small shops on Etsy. Gifts like personalized jewelry, custom artwork, cozy style items, vintage pieces, and home decor to celebrate all of your favorite people and their specific kind of special. For original gifts that say, I get you, Etsy has it.
Okay, next up in our informal exit poll is a friend of mine, Wayne. He generally considers himself a libertarian, but he did make a choice for our next president. Here's what Wayne had to say.
In the past few elections, I've voted third party. I've voted libertarian. That aligns with my beliefs, and it's almost a protest vote as well. This election, having said that, the biggest issues to me, I feel we're overtaxed. I feel we're overregulated. Inflation is through the roof. That's the invisible tax. And I don't feel like the current administration, if they were to get another 4 years, I don't feel like that's going to be addressed. I feel like it's going to get worse. So I'm casting my vote for the Republican nominee. And I've never been a Trump guy. He's maybe not the greatest guy. You may not like some of the things he says, but he gets results. Prices were lower, inflation was down. Those are the issues that matter to me, and I voted the way that I did because I don't see the Democratic Party addressing any of those issues. They run on emotion. They like to elicit emotion out of their voters, and I feel like the Republican side, they're running on results. That's kind of the way I voted this time. I almost feel like a hypocrite saying that, but boom, there it is. Thanks for the opportunity, Raheel, and thanks again, CityCast Houston.
Yeah, Wayne also said that he really didn't like how the Democrats changed candidates with President Biden stepping aside and VP Kamala Harris getting the nomination after the primary, right? And that was a concern when talking to a lot of my friends. They didn't like the way that was done, so that really turned them off to the Democratic Party. But Charles, I'd love to get your thoughts on the economy, on taxes. That has been a huge, huge issue for a lot of Americans and for a lot of Houstonians.
It is. And I think, Wayne makes such a good point, because if those weren't issues right now that were top of mind for a lot of people, I think it'd be a very different race, but particularly very different within Republican voters, because I've spoken to a lot of Republican voters who are, just staunch Trump supporters and liked him during the primary and wanted him even before the primary and were mad other candidates were running. But then I've also talked to plenty of people like Wayne who had previously voted Libertarian or maybe voted for a different candidate during the primary. But at the end of the day, they feel that they were better off in the last administration than they were in the past 4 years. And regardless of the rhetoric and all of the other noise that we hear around the candidate, they want that back and they want to go back to where we were. And, it's hard to argue against that, especially when you look here locally, where you have a Democratic Harris County administration that recently raised taxes on us during a time where we're already heavily, with inflation and taxing. Also at the state level, which is Republican led, and they deserve some attention for that too. But we're facing that, and it's a reality. And I think a lot of people are voting purely based on their wallets and their pocketbooks, and I don't blame them because it's tough. I mean, it is very tough for folks, and we hear a lot from the current administration and from Vice President Harris about what they're going to do, what could happen, what could be, but they are in office right now. And I think, and I also give it to Democrats when they say that the vice president doesn't, have the role and responsibility of changing those things, but they are a part of the administration that is in there today. And this is the pain that Americans are feeling today.
Yeah, and that's something that VP Harris hasn't been able to shake, right? Like this is just an extension of the current administration. So if you win, it's just going to be the same for the next 4 years. Monica, how about your thoughts on what Wayne said?
I haven't heard a lot of people talk about the economy just in my kind of echo chambers, the one I'm in. In part because these issues like choice, access to healthcare are really life and death issues for us. And those kind of supersede. And I think for me and for a lot of people that I've spoken with, Kamala Harris's campaign focusing on that, I think is, she's not focusing on the economy. We all remember James Carville. It's the economy, stupid. How important an issue it is. But I think she really sees that reproductive rights are a more persuasive issue and an issue where you can clearly see how the candidates differ. So. I just seeing and listening to how people vote. I haven't seen a lot of people do what Wayne has done, which is middle of the road until this year. And this is the year that, Trump has persuaded me. And therefore, I am going to go this side. I've seen certainly a lot more the opposite way. People in his administration, people who previously supported him, supporting the other candidate. Yeah. So, our economy is important for all of us from the new immigrants on up, and certainly is an important issue. But I just don't see that being talked a lot about in the areas that I'm in.
I'm glad you brought up, people switching from their party to endorse somebody else, because that is another theme here of the voters switching parties this campaign season. And this was the case for Elizabeth, who told us why she crossed her party line going from Republican to Democrat.
I have identified in the past before this as a Republican, mostly because of the pro-life issue. I've always been pro-life, and pro-life to me, it's protecting the unborn, but it's also protecting everybody that's vulnerable and needs help with their life. And so that's the babies after they're born. It's the young mothers that need help. I'm for protecting life in all forms and helping people. I had mixed feelings about it because Harris, that is her big platform, is abortion. So that bothers me. But we have to make a choice about not having a crazy person in charge of the United States and having Harris. When you think of the lesser of two evils, Trump is way down on the list, and he's just incapable of leading our country.
Charles, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's not something that I haven't heard before from some Republicans who have chosen to vote Democratic. And I've heard it from, well, not personally, but publicly, we've all heard it from members of the administration who served with him and have changed. But at the end of the day, I think more voters look at their day-to-day life than they do with surrounding some of the rhetoric that's coming out of the former president. Because the thing is, ahead of the 2016 election, we heard a lot of things that he was going to do, and a lot of them were kind of jarring to people. And when we got into that administration, a lot that he did, some Democrats and some moderate Republicans did not like, but by and large, some of the things that he was talking about, like mass deportations and things like that, didn't happen. He actually deported fewer people than some Democratic administrations. He spent more than Democratic administrations. So some of the things that were said on the campaign trail did not manifest. And so I think a lot of people look at that as well. But I genuinely think that at the end of the day, when it comes to this election, more people are looking at the state of their lives today and comparing it to their state of their lives then and making a decision based on that.
Elizabeth also said that she did not like how the Republicans initially condemned January 6th when a mob of pro-Trump supporters attacked the U.S. Capitol, and then they changed their tune on it and backed down. And then also who Trump is aligning himself with, people like Elon Musk, Robert Kennedy. So there are other things at play as well. Monica, I'd love to get your reactions.
I hear comments like Elizabeth's more often. In this environment, it's hard to get a gauge of what people really think. You have these commercials about your vote is secret, wives keeping their votes from their husbands, men keeping their votes from other men. I think that people are keeping a lot of things closer to the chest, but I've certainly seen a lot more. And you see it publicly, right? You see Barbara Bush, the former president's daughter, was out there campaigning for Kamala this past week, I believe. And then you see Senator Cheney out there, right, coming in endorsing Colin Allred. You're seeing it more publicly. It's certainly more, I think, publicly palatable to say you're switching to vote to Kamala Harris than you are certainly the other way around. So, I think that what Elizabeth expressed, you're certainly seeing all over the place. And I think you are going to see that reflected in the polls later today.
Staying on this theme, is there a candidate from the opposite party that you would like to see win? Charles, Monica, either of you?
There are plenty of Democrats that I think do phenomenal jobs. She's not a candidate right now, so this might be a cop-out, but Harris County Clerk Tanisha Hudspeth, when the Republicans took took the elections back from the election administrator and gave it to her, some Republicans were like, well, they're giving it to a Democrat, what's going to happen? But she's done a phenomenal job, but that is a cop-out because she's not on the ballot right now. So.
That's all right. We'll take it. It's a tough question. It's a very tough one. Monica, anything from you?
Darn it. You're leaving it to me. I really, I am blue up and down. There's certainly some Democratic judges that I'm not completely excited for, but it doesn't mean that I'm so disappointed with them that I'm going to cross the aisle. It just, judicial races are so difficult because according to the judicial canon of ethics, you're so limited in what you can talk about your positions, right? You're looking at kind of a pedigree, right? You're looking at their history on the bench. So, and just, at being a lawyer, listening to other lawyers talk, there's some Democratic judges that, I wish weren't on the ballot, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna cross over. So,
hey, fair enough. Totally fair.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. Honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. It's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
What's up, guys? It's the champ, Sean O'Malley, here to talk to you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money while watching football. Run your game on Prize Picks.
Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code SPOTIFY. That's code SPOTIFY on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
We've heard from several voters feeling conflicted about the candidates, and here's one more. Patrick says that he's so torn, he ended up making a tough decision. And by the way, Patrick is a comedian, so heads up. He likes to joke about political memes on social media. Here's what he had to say.
This year, I early voted, and I voted for the first female president, Mothra. I voted for Mothra. I thought we've had too many years with Godzilla president, and it's time for a Mothra. No, I did early vote, but this election, I thought long and hard about it, and I have decided to abstain from the presidential election. I just couldn't, with good conscience, vote for either of the candidates, so I decided to put my effort and focus on all of the local elections and referendums and all that stuff, and educate myself on, judge races and stuff. And just hopefully this whole thing doesn't blow up. So fingers crossed. And honestly, I think Mothra would be a great candidate. So look into Mothra's policies if you're not familiar. All right, have a good one.
And of course, Mothra is the monster from the Godzilla movies. And it's also a meme right now on social media. So Patrick going with Mothra. But jokes aside, Patrick said he is not going to vote for president, but he did vote on all the local races. And that is more of a big concern to him because it feels like that's what's going to impact him, Monica.
You gave me a little heart attack when you said we were bringing in a comedian, Raheel, because, sometimes it can go real sideways. But no, I think that there's just fatigue, at the end of every single election. It's exhausting. So it's certainly would be a luxury to be able to look outside of, our arena to see who you would want as president. But these races are incredibly important. They're going to influence everything in the next 4 years. For me, especially as a Latina woman, it's not something I can sit out. I really hope that people are making their way to the polls when this airs. There's really important things in the local races. You have tax assessor, a good race going on there. You have the DA, you have the county attorney, and then you have bonds that are at the very bottom of the ballot that are going to be really critical. A $4.4 billion bond. So it's a good thing that he's at the very least focusing on the bottom of the races, because those are going to be critical to kind of everyday life here in Harris County.
Charles, how about you? Are you voting for Mothra?
I just might. I honestly, all the credit in the world to Patrick. I think too often people are afraid to voice that they just don't know who they want to vote for because it's difficult and because too many of the candidates are offering things that may not appeal to us, and we just don't want to be forced to give one or the other our vote. And I think as a society, we often frame those people as disinterested or uninformed, but it's an informed opinion and a bold one to be able to say that you're not going to pick one of the binary choices. And I'd argue that those local races, I'm going to go on a limb, and I always say this, I think they're more important than the national stuff. What happens at Houston City Council, and I know they're not on the ballot this time, but what happens at Houston City Council or Commissioner's Court, we feel next week, the week after, immediately and really directly, as opposed to some of the things that our presidential candidates and ultimately presidents do. And so, and I think too few people cast their vote for those things. And, the HISD bond, like Monica said, the largest school bond in Texas history. I mean, people need to vote. I don't want to say which way, but people need to vote on that race. And those things are so critically important. And so I give him credit. If he's not going to vote at the top of the ticket, take time to learn the rest of the ticket and then cast your vote there.
All right. Before we wrap this up, Monica, which local race are you most excited about?
Local, I think the tax assessor is going to be really interesting to see. I think the Democrats have it with Annette Ramirez, but it's going to be interesting to see if Steve Raddick's name is going to really mean anything in that race. Also, the Justice, I believe it's Devine, against Christine Weems in the Texas Supreme Court. That might be a little more competitive than we initially thought it would be.
How about you, Charles?
For me, it's what I just mentioned, that HISD bond. And now I'm going to say how I'm voting for it. Voting in that race, which is against it. And I think other people should do so as well. But it's critically important. This is the largest bond in state history, largest school district in the state. And a lot of people are frustrated with things that they're seeing. But all that aside, we have an upcoming legislative session where school funding and things go on. And I think people should really, really take a hard look at that HISD bond and cast their vote the way they see fit.
All right, tonight's the night. We are going to be staying up late watching the results come in, and there are going to be a lot of close races. So let's wrap this up with, what's your go-to election night snack, Monica?
Oh my goodness. Probably popcorn. It has to be popcorn, with all the memes and everything like that, sitting and eating the popcorn and watching the returns.
I love it. Charles, how about you?
Okay, so I have the same go-to whenever I'm nervous, and they are those cheap 99-cent peach rings that you can get at the gas station with the sugar-coated ones. Those are my go-to. I can snack on them all night, and they give me energy because there's plenty of sugar. So that's
I love that. I love getting barbecue sunflower seeds. And it has to be the David brand. I got to go sunflower seeds. It just helps me with the nervous energy. I just like watching the results, and it's just fun, the stress of it. So It's going to be an interesting night. Charles, Monica, thank you so much for joining us, and a big thank you to all of our friends who sent in the voice memos to tell us how they're voting. That was interesting to learn their perspective as well. And here's to a busy night.
Yes, please go vote.
Go vote, yes.
That was Monica Flores Richart and Charles Blain, alongside local voters Jessica Bolaños, Wayne Leggett, Patrick McClellan, and Elizabeth in Southwest Houston, who asked for privacy given her voting history. Once again, you can find your nearest polling location at votetexas.gov. If you enjoyed this episode, text it right now to 3 friends who plan to vote or have already voted. And while you're at it, give us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. For more election news and some ways to relieve some election anxiety, check out our daily newsletter, Hey Houston, at houston.citycast.fm. And just a heads up, we'll be dropping a fresh episode Wednesday morning, but it'll be a little bit later so we can get you the latest election results. That will do it for today. I'm Raheel Ramzanali. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new.
Oh, man. I wish you'd have gone to Monica first, because I got to think. I mean, there are other candidates. She's not a candidate right now.